So, the Nintendo 3DS is starting to near the end of its life cycle, or at least that's what it appears to everyone else. And that's what we're here to discuss today. The Nintendo 3DS. Is it finally on its way out? Well, let's discuss. The Nintendo 3DS was first launched in 2011, and it has enjoyed a pretty comfy ride since then. The 3DS has been loved by children and adults alike for nearly a decade, and here it is. Many years later, well, not very many years later, but you get the picture. It's been around since 2011. The Nintendo 3DS was at its pinnacle of popularity between 2011 until at least 2015. Of course, there are still a lot of gamers who are dedicated to the 3DS. I personally never owned one, but I've played them many times. Me having a gaming store, if you didn't know from watching our past episodes, I have encountered literally hundreds of these. Of course, the big appeal to it was the whole 3D aspect, but as we all know, it's soon to be replaced by the Nintendo Switch Lite. But the big question is, well, is this the end for the 3DS? And the answer is an unfortunate yes. It is the end of the 3DS after nearly a decade. And yes, it had a pretty good run, being in production since 2011. As of the recording of this, it is July 2019. But like I mentioned earlier, Nintendo said they're not just giving up on the 3DS. So I'm guessing from that statement that we could still see some 3DS content over the next 2 or 3 years. Maybe. Just maybe. I'm going to say that they're going to release games, maybe, downloads, at least through 2021. It depends on, I guess, the popularity of it. Because if you look at the Wii in the United States took forever to discontinue. And what's funny is that they are still making new Wii games. Yes, it is true, and that may be the case for the 3DS. Of course, like I mentioned, the whole downloading aspect, that may still be active for a few more years. But it really depends on if the fan base is still there, because it's getting to the point where the fan base is very, very dedicated, or getting there, being dedicated to the Nintendo Switch. I personally have a friend who comes to visit my shop pretty frequently, and they buy both DS and 3DS games because they still have a 3DS. They buy them from me used. And I asked them, do they have a Switch? They said no. They didn't plan on buying a Switch at least for another 2 or 3 years until the prices dropped. Of course, we don't know if Nintendo will have any more offerings by then, but as you've seen, with Nintendo in the past, they redesign things. I don't know how many redesigns the Nintendo 3DS went through. You had the XL and all that stuff. But you may get a case like that with the Switch at some point, which we already have seen that case with the Nintendo Switch Lite, which is supposed to be a smaller version, a smaller portable version, essentially the replacement to the 3DS. And of course, the 3DS had some competition. It was released during the twilight years of the PSP, which was slowly on its way out, or had at least been slowly on its way out since at least 2009. And then at the beginning of the PS Vita, PlayStation Vita era. I think you get the picture. It's been around a long time in terms of how much technology has changed. I mean, look at it. It's been around longer than not most, but a majority of cell phone brands. And we've seen how much cell phones have changed since 2011. And the same goes for most technology. The 3DS was, for its time, state of the art for at least a year or two after its release. And then as it went on, it became not so state of the art. And essentially the answer to the question, like we said, yes, it is on its way out. It is the end of 3DS. When that end will come, it's not known, but you'll see slowly and more slowly, stores will begin eliminating their 3DS stock. Stores like GameStop will continue eliminating their used stock, or they'll just stop carrying them altogether, or they may go to just selling them online only, like some of their other games that have been deemed, retro, essentially. So, but used gaming stores like mine, I run a gaming store, I will continue carrying 3DS games, probably on a permanent, semi-permanent basis, because I carry a lot of the older retro games and some of the newer ones, which I'm actually at my store right now recording this. I'm actually looking at a copy of Angry Birds, Star Wars Angry Birds for 3DS, a brand new sealed copy. And I actually carry in my store quite a few 3DS, because the thing with 3DS is the reason that it's still going to stick around as a, I guess you could say, a legacy system is because soon you'll be able to get them so cheap used that parents will give them to their children to play over a Nintendo Switch just to avoid their children from breaking it, which is actually a smart tactic. It's something that I often tell parents. I say, well, buy them an older system, start them out on an older handheld, and then slowly move them up to the newer stuff till they're responsible enough that they can own that Nintendo Switch without breaking it, or like one of my customers learned the hard way recently, dropping it in the toilet. Of course, if you've been around on YouTube for a while, you've seen everybody talking about for the past year or two, oh, is this the end for 3DS? The end that they have talked about at the time was a little premature. Of course, they were talking about the arrival of the Switch era. But of course now, with me talking about it, of course, I can officially declare that the era of the 3DS will be over very soon. I'm going to say September 19th, 2019 is the day that the 3DS era will officially be considered a thing of the past. Of course, stores will continue selling these. I'm actually not very far from a local Walmart. I often go there. They carry a continuously large stock of the systems, both the 2DS and the 3DS. So it will, you'll see those slowly dwindling. You'll probably see them in stores at least through 2020, maybe into 2021, but after that, they'll just slowly disappear, and that will be the official end of the 3DS. And of course, that will be when they pull them from stores, or they sell off the last remaining bit of their stock. So, my ode to Nintendo 3DS. You were a gallant little system, and you will never be forgotten in the minds and hearts of thousands, well, not thousands, millions upon millions of gamers worldwide. So, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit the bell if you want notifications of when we do more awesome videos. And until next time, I'll see ya.